The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Captain Han Jiwoo had ever seen. It was a vast sphere with seating arranged in concentric circles. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the seats. Some were humanoid. Others were insectoid, reptilian, or shapes Jiwoo had no words for. The air was filled with the sound of translation devices converting thousands of languages into comprehensible speech. Jiwoo stood at the center of it all. Beside him were Lieutenant Park Yoon-ji, Commander Lee Dae-hyun, Dr. Kim Min-ho, and the others from his crew. They wore their uniforms cleaned and pressed. They looked tired but determined. Above them, projected on a massive holographic display, was the evidence. Every file, every communication, every attack order that Specialist Yoon Hana had stolen from the Vrelnath flagship. The galaxy was watching. Ambassador Ro Seojin, Earth's diplomatic representative, stepped forward. She was an older woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She had spent 20 years navigating galactic politics. Today would be her greatest test. Honorable Council members, Ro began. We are here because of a crime. Not a small crime. Not a misunderstanding. A systematic campaign to eliminate humanity from deep space. 12 ships destroyed, 437 crew members murdered, and a plan to assault our colonies that would have killed millions. The chamber erupted with noise. Some species shouted denials. Others demanded proof. The council speaker, a massive crystalline being called the prelate, raised one limb for silence. The human delegation will present their evidence, the prelate said. Without interruption, Yoon stepped forward. She activated a control pad, and the holographic display changed. This is the attack order for the destruction of the human vessel Stellar Dawn. It was signed by Vrelnath Commander Kex. The ship was destroyed by a focused energy weapon. But the official report claimed equipment failure. Another image appeared. This is the communication between the Vrelnath Collective, the Quellan Empire, and the Thorsian Dominion. They discuss humanity's rapid technological advancement. They call us a threat that must be contained. More images, more evidence. The chamber grew quieter as species after species saw the truth displayed before them. There was no denying it. The conspiracy was real. Finally, the evidence presentation ended. Ro turned to face the assembled council. We demand justice. We demand reparations. And we demand changes to prevent this from ever happening to another species. The Vrelnath delegation tried to speak, but the prelate cut them off. The Vrelnath Collective will have their chance to respond. But first, I want to hear from the captain. Captain Han Jiwoo approached. Jiwoo walked forward. He felt every eye in the chamber on him. He was just an exploration captain. He was not a soldier or a diplomat. But he had started this and he would finish it. What do you want to say, Captain? The prelate asked. Jiwoo took a breath. I want to say that we didn't ask for this. We were explorers, scientists. We went into space to learn, not to fight. But you forced us to become fighters. You tried to erase us because you were afraid of what we might become. He gestured to the evidence floating above. You were right to be afraid. Not because we want to conquer you, but because we refuse to be conquered. You tried to hide our ship. You tried to make us disappear. Instead, you showed the galaxy what humanity can do when we're pushed into a corner. And what is that? A Quellan representative challenged. We adapt. We survive. We overcome. Jiwoo looked around the chamber. You have species here that are stronger than us, faster than us, more advanced than us. But none of you think like we do. None of you approach problems the way we do. That's what scared you. Not our weapons. Not our ships. Our minds. Admiral Shin Hyuk stepped forward from the human delegation. He was still in his military uniform, decorated with medals from decades of service. The captain speaks the truth. But there is something else the council should know. The weapons you saw us use in the battle, the railguns, the AI drones, the quantum communications, those were all developed from technology we found on derelict ships. The chamber went silent. Your technology, Admiral Hyuk continued. Vrelnath ships, Quellan ships, Thorsian ships. We studied them. We learned from them, and we improved them. You shared your technology with each other through the Council's approved channels. We took what you threw away and made it better. A Thorsian delegate stood up, his reptilian features twisted with anger. That is theft. You had no right to. We had every right, Dr. Kim Min-ho interrupted. The Council's own laws state that salvaged technology from abandoned vessels becomes the property of whoever recovers it. We followed your laws. We just used the technology more creatively than you expected. More noise filled the chamber. Species were arguing with each other. Some were angry. Some were shocked. Some were laughing at the irony of it all. The prelate called for order again. The council will now vote on the human demands. All in favor of recognizing the crimes committed against humanity indicate approval. Lights appeared throughout the chamber as species voted. Jiwoo watched, holding his breath. One by one, the votes were counted. When it was done, the prelate announced the result. The motion passes. 412 votes in favor, 73 against. The crimes are recognized. Ro smiled slightly. It was a small victory, but an important one. The council will now vote on reparations, the prelate continued. This vote was closer. Many species were reluctant to establish a precedent for paying damages, but in the end, the motion passed. Humanity would receive compensation for their lost ships and crew. Finally, the prelate said, the matter of council reform. The human delegation has proposed changes to the voting structure to prevent majority tyranny. All in favor? This time the vote was split almost evenly. Species that had been marginalized by the council's power structure voted yes. The dominant species voted no. The prelate counted the results twice before announcing them. The motion passes by a margin of 7 votes. Council reform will be implemented. The chamber erupted. Some species celebrated. Others protested. But the decision was made. The Galactic Council would change. It would be more fair, more balanced, and humanity would have a voice in it. But Ro was not done. She stepped forward again. There is one more thing. Humanity does not seek revenge. We do not want to dominate. We want partnership. We want cooperation. We want to share what we've learned. What do you mean? A small, timid species asked. They were called the Felkor, and they had been silent throughout the entire session. Dr. Kang Suman stepped forward. We want to establish joint research stations, places where different species can work together on problems that affect all of us. Disease, energy production, food scarcity. We have ideas. We have solutions. And we want to share them. Why? The Quellan delegate asked suspiciously. What do you gain? Progress, Minho said simply. Humanity advances fastest when we work with others. We learned that on Earth. We want to apply it to the galaxy. The proposal was unexpected. Species whispered among themselves. This was not what they had anticipated. They expected humanity to demand territory or resources or power. Instead, humanity was offering to help. The council will consider this proposal, the prelate said, but not today. We have heard enough for one session. We will reconvene in 3 days. The session ended. Jiwoo and his crew were escorted to quarters in the diplomatic district. They were finally safe, finally able to rest, but Jiwoo couldn't sleep. He stood by the window looking out at the alien city below. Yoonji found him there hours later. Can't sleep, Captain? Just thinking. About everything we went through. About where we go from here. We go forward. Like we always do, Jiwoo smiled. You're right. But it's strange, isn't it? A week ago we were hiding in the dark, hoping not to die. Now we're changing the entire galactic political structure. That's humanity for you. We don't do anything small. 3 days later, the council reconvened. This time the session was calmer. The evidence had been reviewed. The votes had been taken. Now it was time for decisions. The Vrelnath Collective announced that their government had collapsed. New leadership was taking over. Leadership that rejected the conspiracy. They formally apologized to humanity and offered to share their biocomputing technology as part of the reparations. The Quellan Empire announced similar changes. Their military leaders had been removed. Reformists were in charge now. Even the Thorsian Dominion made concessions. They agreed to open their borders to human trade ships, but the biggest surprise came from the smaller species. The Felkor, the Minath, the Torvan Union, species that had been ignored by the major powers. They approached humanity with proposals for joint colonies, shared research, military alliances. We've been watching you, the Felkor representative said to Jiwoo. We've seen what you can do. You're strong, but you're also fair. You could have demanded vengeance, but you asked for justice. We want to stand with you. Over the following weeks, treaties were signed. Agreements were made. The first joint research station was planned. It would orbit a neutral world and be staffed by humans and aliens working together. Ambassador Ro negotiated the details with skill and patience. She ensured that humanity got everything they needed while also building bridges with other species. She turned enemies into partners and partners into friends. Captain Han Jiwoo stared at the tactical display. The Vrelnath Doomsday weapon was charging. He could see the energy readings climbing. In 6 minutes, maybe less, it would reach critical mass. Then everyone would die. Human and alien alike. What's your idea, Captain? Admiral Shin Hyuk asked over the communication channel. The weapon uses zero-point energy extraction, Jiwoo said. We encountered that technology before, 20 years ago, on the failed Mars colony experiment. We know how it works. We know its weakness. I'm listening. If we detonate a quantum reactor directly in the weapon's energy field, it will create a controlled singularity. The weapon will collapse in on itself instead of exploding outward. There was silence on the channel. Then the Admiral spoke again, his voice heavy. That's a suicide mission. Whoever flies that ship won't be coming back. I know. Captain Jiwoo, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm volunteering. The Taguchi's pride is already damaged. Our reactor is unstable. We're the logical choice. On the bridge, Lieutenant Park Yoonji stepped forward. Captain, no. We can automate the process. I can program the ship's computer to fly the mission. Nobody needs to die. Jiwoo looked at her. You can do that? Give me 2 minutes. You have 90 seconds. Yoonji's hands flew across her console. Behind her, Engineer Bae Jisoo entered the bridge. Captain, I heard what you're planning. The reactor needs manual calibration. Let me stay behind to handle it. Negative, Jiwoo said. If Lieutenant Park says she can automate it, then we evacuate everyone. Sir, I can make sure it works. I can adjust the timing in real time. Without someone monitoring the reactor, there's a 30% chance of failure. 30%? Admiral Hyuk interrupted. Captain, those are not good odds. They're better than 0, Jiwoo said. He looked at Bae. You'll have 60 seconds to make the final adjustments, then you evacuate to the nearest ship via emergency pod. Clear? Bae nodded. Clear, sir. All crew, this is the captain. Abandon ship. I repeat, abandon ship. You have 3 minutes to reach the escape pods. The bridge erupted with activity. Personnel grabbed essential equipment and ran for the exits. Ensign Choi Nari paused at her station. Captain, it's been an honor. The honor was mine, Ensign. Now get off my ship before I have Commander Lee throw you in a pod. Nari smiled and left. One by one, the bridge cleared. Soon only Jiwoo, Yoonji, and Bae remained. The engineer was already in the reactor room, making his final adjustments. His voice came through the speakers. Reactor is set. Automatic sequence initialized. I'm heading to the pod now. Good luck, engineer, Jiwoo said. You too, Captain. It's been a hell of a ride. Yoonji finished her programming. It's done. The ship will fly itself. We need to go now. They ran for the escape pods. Behind them, the Taguchi's Pride's engines ignited one last time. The ship began moving toward the Vrelnath flagship. Automated, unstoppable, Jiwoo and Yoonji reached the last pod. Through the window, they could see other pods launching from the ship. Small silver spheres scattering into space. The defense fleet was already moving to retrieve them. Get in, Jiwoo said. Yoonji climbed into the pod. Jiwoo started to follow, then paused. He looked back at his ship. The vessel that had carried them for 3 years. The ship that had survived everything the galaxy threw at them. Captain, Yoonji shouted. We have 30 seconds. Jiwoo climbed in and sealed the hatch. The pod launched with a burst of compressed air. They tumbled away from the Taguchi's Pride, spinning in the void. Through the window, Jiwoo watched his ship continue its final journey. The Vrelnath had noticed. Their fleet was trying to intercept, but the defense fleet blocked them. Energy weapons lit up space. Human ships used tactics the aliens had never seen before. They moved in coordinated groups, each ship covering another's weaknesses. The Vrelnath ships were larger and more powerful, but the human ships were faster and smarter. Look at them go, Yoonji whispered. Admiral Hyuk's voice came through the pod's emergency radio. All ships maintain formation. Do not let the Vrelnath stop that vessel. The battle intensified. A Vrelnath cruiser broke through the human line and fired at the Taguchi's Pride. The shot hit the ship's flank, tearing through armor. But the ship kept going. Its automated systems compensated for the damage. Captain Oh Junho, commanding the defense fleet's vanguard ship Indomitable, moved his vessel directly into the Vrelnath's path. You want to stop that ship? You'll have to go through me first. The Vrelnath cruiser fired again. The Indomitable's shields flared but held. Oh Junho returned fire with weapons that made the alien ship stagger. Human railguns. Kinetic weapons that bypassed energy shields by sheer force. What are those? The Vrelnath commander transmitted. That technology is not approved by the Council. The Council doesn't control what we build, Oh Junho replied. You should have learned that before you started this war. More Vrelnath ships moved to intercept the Taiguki's pride. More human ships blocked them. The defense fleet fought with precision and fury. They had seen the evidence. They knew about the 12 ships that had been destroyed. They knew about the planned assault on human colonies, and they were angry. Dr. Kang Suman's voice came through the fleet communication network. She was aboard the flagship Sovereign. All ships, I'm detecting increased energy readings from the Vrelnath weapon. It's accelerating the charge sequence. Time to detonation is now 4 minutes. Taiguki's pride is still 2 minutes out, Admiral Hyuk said. We need to buy time. Commander Lee Daehyun, now safely aboard a defense fleet destroyer, studied the tactical situation. Admiral, request permission to launch drone swarms. Permission granted. Hatches opened on a dozen human ships. Thousands of small drones poured out like angry insects. They swarmed toward the Vrelnath fleet using AI coordination. The drones were too small and too many for the aliens' targeting systems. They overwhelmed the enemy sensors. What is this? Another Vrelnath commander transmitted. This is not how warfare is conducted. It is now, Daehyun replied. The drones attached themselves to Vrelnath ships and began disrupting their systems. Not destroying them, but confusing them, jamming their sensors, interfering with their communications. The Vrelnath fleet fell into chaos. The Taiguki's pride reached the Vrelnath flagship. Its damaged hull scraped against the larger ship's energy field. Alarms blared across both vessels. The doomsday weapons charge hit critical mass. Reactor detonation in 3 seconds, Yunji said quietly from the escape pod. Jiwoo held his breath. 3 seconds felt like forever. He thought about his crew. About Earth, about humanity's place in the galaxy. They had been attacked. They had been hunted. They had been told they didn't belong among the stars, and they had proven everyone wrong. The Taiguki's pride's reactor exploded. But it was not a chaotic explosion. It was controlled, precise, exactly as Yunji had programmed. The energy pulse hit the doomsday weapon's power matrix and created a feedback loop. The weapon's own energy turned inward. Space folded. Reality twisted. For a moment, Jiwoo could see colors that didn't exist and shapes that hurt to look at. Then everything snapped back into focus. Where the Vrelnath flagship had been, there was now a small black sphere. A micro-singularity, stable but contained. The doomsday weapon had been turned into a prison for itself. The Vrelnath flagship and 3 of its escort carriers were caught in the gravitational field. They were pulled inward, crushed, and compressed into nothing. The remaining Vrelnath ships stopped firing. They just stopped. Their commanders couldn't process what had just happened. Vrelnath fleet, this is Admiral Shin Hyuk. You have 30 seconds to surrender or we will treat you as hostile combatants. Choose wisely. One by one, the Vrelnath ships powered down their weapons. The Quellan and Thorsian vessels that had been supporting them turned and ran. They wanted no part of this anymore. The battle was over. A retrieval ship approached Jiwoo's escape pod. Magnetic clamps locked on and pulled them toward the airlock. Jiwoo and Yunji climbed out into a corridor filled with Defense Fleet personnel. They all stopped and saluted. Captain on deck. Someone shouted. Jiwoo was confused. I'm not a Defense Fleet captain. You're the captain who started this, Admiral Hyuk said, walking down the corridor toward them. The captain who exposed the conspiracy. The captain who just saved all of us. He saluted. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Jiwoo returned the salute, feeling overwhelmed. Around him, his crew was being reunited. He saw Daehyun embracing Specialist Yoon Hana. He saw Dr. Kim Minho talking excitedly with other scientists. He saw Ensign Nari laughing with relief. What happens now? Jiwoo asked the Admiral. Now? Now the real work begins. The evidence you broadcast reached everyone. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. Every species will be watching. Humanity finally gets to tell its side of the story. Jiwoo looked out the window at the stars, at the defense fleet assembling around them, at the remains of the Vrelnath conspiracy floating in space. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. But survival was just the beginning. Now they had to make sure this never happened again. They had to show the galaxy that humanity deserved to be among the stars, and they had to do it the right way, with honor, with justice. with the same determination that had carried them through these dark days. The inside of the Vrelnath flagship smelled wrong. Commander Lee Dae-hyun wrinkled his nose inside his helmet as they crawled through the access tunnel. The air was thick with ammonia, and something else he couldn't identify. The corridor walls were not metal but something organic, like being inside a living creature. "I hate this," Specialist Yoon Hana whispered over the communication link. "Stay focused," Dae-hyun said. "Nam, which way?" Petty Officer Nam Taeyang checked his scanner. "Computer core should be 3 levels down. But there's a problem. Security drones are patrolling the main corridors. I count at least a dozen. Can we avoid them?" "Maybe, but it will take longer," Dae-hyun thought quickly. Time was not on their side. The longer they stayed aboard, the higher the chance of discovery. "We go through the maintenance shafts. Less chance of contact." They moved deeper into the ship. The maintenance shafts were narrow and dark. Dae-hyun could hear his own breathing inside the helmet. Behind him, Yoon moved quietly. She carried a portable computer terminal strapped to her back. The terminal was their key to everything. A sound echoed through the shaft. Clicking and scraping. Something was moving toward them. "Drone," Nam whispered. "It's doing a routine inspection." They pressed themselves against the shaft walls. The space was barely wide enough for their suits. Dae-hyun held his breath as the security drone rounded the corner. It was a floating sphere covered in sensors and what looked like weapons. The drone paused, its sensors sweeping the area. For a moment, Dae-hyun was certain they had been spotted. His hand moved to the weapon at his hip. But then the drone continued past them, clicking to itself as it floated away. "That was close," Yoon breathed. "It's going to get closer," Dae-hyun said. "Keep moving." They reached the computer core 20 minutes later. The room was massive, filled with strange organic computers that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Vrelnath technicians moved between the stations, their insect-like bodies clicking as they worked. "How many?" Dae-hyun asked. Nam counted. 6 technicians, no guards. They don't expect trouble inside their own ship. "Good. That's their mistake." Dae-hyun pulled out 3 small devices from his belt. EMP charges. They were designed for disabling electronics, but they might work on biocomputers too. He placed them strategically around the room's entrance. "Yoon, how long do you need?" 5 minutes if their system is standard. Longer if there are surprises. You have 3 minutes after the EMPs go off. Make it work. Dae-hyun triggered the charges. There was a soft pulse of energy, barely visible. The organic computers flickered and went dark. The Vrelnath technicians froze, confused. Their bio-neural interfaces had just been severed from the network. "Go!" Dae-hyun shouted. They burst into the room. The Vrelnath turned, but they were slow to react. Dae-hyun moved fast, using non-lethal force to subdue the technicians. They fell one by one, unconscious but alive. He didn't want to kill if he could avoid it. Yoon ran to the main terminal. She pulled out cables from her portable computer and connected them to the Vrelnath system. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "I'm in. Starting the data extraction." "How long?" 2 minutes. "You said 3. I'm highly motivated." Nam took position by the door, watching for more drones. Dae-hyun stood beside Yoon, keeping one eye on the unconscious technicians. The organic computers were starting to flicker back to life. The EMP effects were temporary. "Captain," Dae-hyun said into his helmet communicator. "We're at the core. Starting extraction now." On the Taeguki's Pride, Captain Han Ji-woo felt his heart race. "Acknowledged. Be ready to move fast." We're picking up increased activity on their communications network. Back on the flagship, Yoon stared at her screen. "I've got the attack orders. I've got the falsified reports. I've got communications between council members. This is everything we need." "Download it and let's go," Dae-hyun said. "Wait, there's something else here. Another file. It's labeled Priority 1. We don't have time for extra reading. Captain needs to see this." Yoon opened the file. Her face went pale inside her helmet. "Oh no, what is it?" "They're not just destroying our ships. They're planning a full assault on Earth's colonies. 3 battle fleets. They're going to wipe out every human settlement outside the solar system." Dae-hyun felt cold. "When?" 2 weeks. They're waiting for council approval, but according to this, the approval is already guaranteed." An alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the computer core. On Yoon's screen, warning symbols appeared. "They detected the intrusion," she said. "The system is trying to purge the evidence. It's deleting files. Can you stop it?" "No, but I can do something better." Yoon's fingers moved faster. I'm going to broadcast everything. Right now. Every file, every communication, every piece of evidence. I'm sending it to every receiver in range. That includes the Galactic Council emergency channels, Nam said. I know. They'll know we're here. I know that too. Daehyun made the decision in a split second. Do it! Yoon pressed enter. On her screen, data began flowing out. Terabytes of information flooding subspace communication channels, attack orders, falsified accident reports, messages between Vrelnath commanders and council members, plans for the assault on human colonies, all of it streaming across the galaxy for anyone to see. Done, Yoon said. The whole galaxy just got their homework. Alarms grew louder. Through the walls, they could hear running footsteps and angry clicking sounds. The Vrelnath knew they had intruders. Time to leave, Daehyun said. They ran for the exit. Behind them, the computer core erupted with activity as Vrelnath security forces converged on their position. Daehyun threw another EMP charge behind them, buying precious seconds. They reached the maintenance shaft and climbed. Below them, they could hear the Vrelnath soldiers giving chase. The aliens were fast in their own environment. Captain, Daehyun gasped into his communicator. We're compromised. Heading for extraction point, but we're being pursued. On the Taegukgi's Pride, Jiwoo stood up from his chair. Understood. We're coming to get you. Sir, that will expose the ship. I don't care. I'm not leaving you behind. Lieutenant Park Yoonji was already at her station. Captain, I have an idea. It's going to be dangerous. Everything is dangerous right now. What's your idea? We use the reactor. One massive power surge directed at the Vrelnath flagship. It will create an electromagnetic pulse big enough to shut down every system on that ship for about 47 seconds. What happens to us? Best case? Our reactor goes into emergency shutdown and we lose main power for a few hours. Worst case? The reactor explodes and we all die. Jiwoo looked at the view screen. He could see the Vrelnath flagship in the distance. Somewhere inside that ship, 3 of his crew members were running for their lives. Do it! Yoonji's hands moved across her controls. Charging the reactor now. This is going to take everything we have. On the flagship, Daehyun and his team burst from the maintenance shaft onto an open deck. Vrelnath soldiers were waiting. Weapons raised. Daehyun counted at least 20 hostiles. This is bad, Nam said. Then all the lights went out. The Vrelnath soldiers stumbled in the sudden darkness. Their bio-neural enhancements relied on the ship's computer network. Without it, they were confused and disoriented. Run! Daehyun shouted. They sprinted across the deck. Behind them, emergency lights flickered on, but the Vrelnath were still recovering. The team reached the airlock they had entered through. Nam worked the controls manually while Daehyun and Yoon held the door. The airlock opened. They dove into space. Around them, the Vrelnath flagship was dark and quiet. The EMP had worked, but the effect wouldn't last long. Taegukgi's Pride, we're out, Daehyun reported. We see you. Ensign Choinari's voice came back. Adjusting position for pickup. The human ship moved through space. It was still running on minimal power, but it was moving toward them. Daehyun used his suit thrusters to close the distance. Beside him, Yoon and Nam did the same. Then the Vrelnath flagship's lights came back on. 47 seconds had passed. The ship's systems were rebooting, and now they knew exactly where the Taegukgi's Pride was. Captain, Nari said urgently, multiple ships powering weapons. All of them are targeting us, Jiwoo gripped his armrests. Get that team aboard now. The 3 figures reached the airlock. They tumbled inside and the door sealed. We're in, Daehyun shouted. Evasive maneuvers, Jiwoo ordered. The ship turned hard. Energy weapons flashed through the space they had just occupied. The Vrelnath fleet was firing. 6 warships against 1 exploration vessel, sir, Yoonji said. Reactor is at critical levels. I can't get us to full speed. On the view screen, more ships appeared. Human ships. Dozens of them emerging from faster-than-light travel. They were military vessels bristling with weapons. At their head was a massive battleship. This is Admiral Shin Hyok of the Earth Defense Fleet, a voice boomed over the communication channels. All Vrelnath vessels stand down immediately. Jiwoo stared at the screen in disbelief. The broadcast. They heard the broadcast and sent the fleet. The Vrelnath ships hesitated. They were outnumbered now. But their commander was not ready to surrender. On the tactical display, Jiwoo saw something new powering up on the Vrelnath flagship. What is that? He asked. Dr. Kang Suman, who had been monitoring the enemy ship's emissions, looked up with wide eyes. It's a zero-point energy weapon. Captain, that's a doomsday device. The ship was cold. Without main power, the heating systems ran on minimal capacity. Captain Han Ji-woo could see his breath in the air as he walked through the darkened corridors. The crew wore extra layers and moved quietly, as if noise itself might give them away. 3 days had passed since they went dark. 3 days of drifting in silence while Vrelnath warships swept the area. The enemy was patient. They searched every sector, every cubic meter of space. They were looking for wreckage. Instead, they kept finding nothing. Ji-woo found Lieutenant Park Yoonji in the engine room working by the light of a single handheld lamp. She was studying the cloaking beacon they had found. It sat on a workbench, its alien components spread out like puzzle pieces. "Tell me something good," Ji-woo said. Yoonji looked up. Her face was smudged with grease and exhaustion. "I figured out how it works. The beacon creates a false sensor reading. It makes our ship look like empty space. But here's the interesting part. It was designed for ships that use bio-neural processors. The Vrelnath use organic computing systems. So do most of the other species." "But we don't," Ji-woo said. "Exactly. We use quantum computers, silicon and light instead of neurons and chemicals. The beacon interferes with our systems because it's trying to cloak something that thinks differently than it expects." Ji-woo knelt down beside the workbench.
"Can we use that?"
Yoonji smiled. It was the first smile Ji-woo had seen in days. "I think we can do better than that. I think we can turn this beacon into a weapon." "Explain." "The beacon transmits a jamming field. It tells sensors what to see. Right now it's telling them to see nothing. But if I reprogram it, I could make it tell sensors to see something else." "Anything else? Like a Vrelnath ship? Or a debris field? Or a fleet of human warships? Whatever we want." Ji-woo felt hope stir in his chest for the first time in days. "How long do you need?" "Give me 12 hours. You have 6. Yoonji nodded and turned back to her work. Ji-woo left her alone and made his way to the communications room. Specialist Yoon Hana was there, hunched over her console in the dim light. She wore headphones and was listening intently to something. "What do you have?" Ji-woo asked. Yoon looked up startled. She pulled off the headphones. "Captain, I've been monitoring Vrelnath transmissions. I broke their encryption." "That's not possible. Military encryption takes weeks to crack." "Normally, yes. But I cheated. I used their own beacon signal as a key. It's transmitting on the same frequency as their military network. Once I matched the patterns, the rest fell into place." "What are they saying?" Yoon's expression darkened. "It's bad, Captain. This isn't just about us. The Vrelnath are working with other species, the Quellan Empire and the Thorsian Dominion. They call themselves the Council Alliance. What do they want? They're afraid of us. Of humanity. They've been watching our progress for decades. We went from primitive aircraft to deep space exploration in less than 200 years. That's faster than any species in recorded history. They think we're dangerous." Ji-woo felt anger rise in his throat. "So they decided to kill us?" "Not all of us. Just our ships. They want to make it look like accidents. If enough human vessels disappear, Earth will stop sending ships into deep space. We'll be trapped in our own solar system." "How many ships have they destroyed?" Yoon looked down at her notes. "According to their transmissions, 12. Over the past 2 years. The Stellar Dawn, the New Horizon, the Marco Polo, all reported as lost to accidents or equipment failure." Ji-woo's hands curled into fists. 12 ships, hundreds of crew members, people with families waiting for them on Earth. All murdered to keep humanity contained. "Do we have proof?" Ji-woo asked. "I recorded everything. Attack orders, falsified reports, communications between council members. It's all here." "Good, we're going to need it." Ji-woo called a meeting in the mess hall. The senior officers gathered around a table. Commander Lee Dae-hyun, Dr. Kim Min-ho, Ensign Choi Nari and the others. They looked tired and scared, but their eyes were still sharp. "We have 2 choices," Ji-woo said. "We can try to sneak past the blockade and run home to Earth, or we can fight back." "Fight?" Dae-hyun said. "Captain, we're 1 ship against 6 warships. Those aren't good odds. I'm not talking about a straight fight. I'm talking about exposing what they've done. Yoon has proof of their conspiracy. If we can get that information to the Galactic Council, the Vrelnath and their allies will have to answer for their crimes." Min-ho leaned forward. "The Council is meeting on Axiom Prime in 1 week. Every species sends representatives. If we could broadcast the evidence there in front of everyone, they couldn't cover it up. How do we get there? Nari asked. They're watching every route to Axiom Prime. Jiwoo looked at each of them in turn. We steal the proof from their flagship. We infiltrate the Vrelnath command ship, access their central computer, and take everything. Then we broadcast it to the entire galaxy before they can stop us. Silence filled the room. Then Daehyun laughed. It was a dark sound. Captain, that's insane. Do you have a better idea? No, but insane doesn't mean it's wrong. Over the next hours they planned. Yoonji would modify the beacon to create sensor blind spots. Daehyun would lead a strike team to board the Vrelnath flagship. Yoon would hack their computer systems from a distance. Dr. Kang Suman, the ship's AI specialist, would create a virus to help them steal the data. Petty Officer Nam Taeyang volunteered to handle the spacewalk. He was the best zero-gravity technician on the ship. If anyone could cross the void between ships without being detected, it was him. When do we do this? Minho asked. Jiwoo checked the time. The Vrelnath flagship is scheduled to depart in 18 hours. We go in 16. The next day felt like the longest of Jiwoo's life. He watched his crew prepare. They checked equipment, reviewed plans, and tried not to think about everything that could go wrong. There were hundreds of ways this could fail. Only one way it could succeed. Yoonji finished modifying the beacon with an hour to spare. She brought it to the bridge looking exhausted but satisfied. It's ready. I can create a blind spot 30 meters wide. That should be enough for the team to cross. Will they detect the change in the signal? Jiwoo asked. Not unless they're looking for it. And right now they think we're dead. They're not looking. Daehyun assembled his team. Himself, Yoon, and Nam. 3 people to infiltrate an enemy warship carrying a crew of 200. 3 people to change everything. They suited up in the airlock. The suits were designed for emergency repairs, not combat missions, but they would have to do. Each suit carried tools, weapons, and a small computer linked to the ship. Remember, Jiwoo said over the communication link. You get in, you get the data, you get out. No heroics. We need you alive. Understood, Captain, Daehyun said. The airlock opened. The 3 figures drifted out into space. Behind them, the Taegukgi's pride hung in the darkness like a sleeping giant. Ahead, the Vrelnath flagship waited, its hull gleaming with strange lights. Jiwoo watched from the bridge. On his screen, he could see the team moving through the void. They used small thrusters to adjust their trajectory. No large burns, nothing that might show up on sensors. Beacon is active, Yoonji reported. Creating blind spot now. On the tactical display, a small area of space turned gray. The Vrelnath sensors couldn't see into that zone. The team drifted through it, invisible and silent. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The team reached the enemy hull and attached themselves with magnetic clamps. Nam began working on an access hatch. His tools moved quickly in the darkness. We're in, Daehyun reported, moving to the computer core. Jiwoo realized he had been holding his breath. He forced himself to breathe normally. On the bridge, everyone watched and waited. There was nothing they could do now except hope. Hope that the plan would work. Hope that the team would survive. Hope that humanity would finally get justice for the 12 ships that came before them. Hope was all they had left. The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Han Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Taegukgi's Pride and watched the massive space station grow larger on the view screen. Meridian 7 was supposed to be their last stop before home. 3 years of mapping empty space, cataloging dead planets, and eating recycled food. 3 years away from Earth. 3 years too long. Captain, we're cleared for docking Bay 12, Ensign Choi Nari said from her station. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. She was young, barely 24, but she had kept them alive through asteroid fields and solar storms. Jiwoo trusted her completely. Take us in slowly, Jiwoo said. I don't want any accidents this close to home. The ship glided toward the station. Through the windows, Jiwoo could see dozens of alien vessels docked at various ports. The Meridian 7 station was a neutral zone, a place where different species came to trade and refuel. Some of the ships were sleek and silver. Others looked like they were built from scrap metal and hope. Humanity's ship was somewhere in between. Lieutenant Park Yoonji entered the bridge, wiping grease from her hands. The chief engineer always looked like she had just crawled out of an engine room. Usually because she had. Captain, I need to run diagnostics on the main drive while we're docked. We've been pushing the engines hard for 3 years. They need rest as much as we do. How long? Jiwoo asked. 6 hours, maybe 8. I want to do it right, Jiwoo nodded. Do what you need to do. We're not in a hurry now, but that was a lie. Everyone was in a hurry. Everyone wanted to go home. The ship docked with a soft thud. Jiwoo felt the clamps lock into place through the deck plates. They were secure. They were safe. Or so he thought. Dr. Kim Minho appeared in the doorway. The xenobiologist was older than the rest of the crew, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 3 years studying alien life forms that mostly turned out to be bacteria and fungus. Captain, I'd like permission to visit the station's market. I want to pick up some samples before we leave. Approved. Take Ensign Nari with you. I don't want anyone wandering around alone. Minho smiled. You don't trust our alien friends? I don't trust anyone this far from home, Jiwoo said. 2 hours later, Jiwoo was in his quarters reviewing the mission reports when his communication panel beeped. It was Minho. The doctor's face on the screen looked worried. Captain, we have a problem. Jiwoo sat up straight. What kind of problem? I'm in the market district. There are Vrelnath here. A lot of them. They're watching our ship. The Vrelnath were insectoid creatures, tall and thin with too many joints in their limbs. They controlled a large portion of the galactic trade routes. Humanity had dealt with them before. The meetings were always tense. The Vrelnath looked at humans the way humans might look at interesting insects. Are they doing anything threatening? Jiwoo asked. No, just watching. But Captain, I managed to get close to one of their data terminals. They're transmitting something to their fleet, encrypted, heavy encryption. Jiwoo felt cold. Get back to the ship now. He switched channels. Lieutenant Park, how long until those diagnostics are done? I just started, Captain. I need at least 4 more hours while you have 2. Get it done. He heard Yoonji's sharp intake of breath. She didn't ask questions. Understood. Jiwoo called Commander Lee Daehyun to the bridge. The security officer arrived within minutes, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. Daehyun was former Special Forces, and he moved like he expected trouble around every corner. Out here he was usually right. What's going on? Daehyun asked. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. I want a full security sweep of the ship. Check for anything that wasn't there before we docked. Daehyun's eyes narrowed. You think they planted something on us? I think the Vrelnath are very interested in our ship, and I don't like it. Daehyun left without another word. Jiwoo returned to the bridge and found Nari already at her station. Ensign, start plotting an emergency departure course. Something fast and unpredictable. How unpredictable, sir? Very. Minho returned to the ship 20 minutes later, carrying a small data drive. He went straight to the bridge. Captain, I intercepted part of their transmission. It's talking about human ships. About us specifically. They mention the Galactic Council. What does the Council want with us? Jiwoo asked. I don't know. The encryption is military grade. I couldn't break it all. But there was one phrase that came through clearly. Eliminate evidence of advancement. The bridge went quiet. Jiwoo felt every eye turn to him. Specialist Yoon, he said to the communications officer. Try to contact Earth, priority channel. Yoon Hana worked her controls for several minutes. Then she looked up, her face pale. Captain, I can't get through. Something is jamming us, but it's subtle. It looks like natural interference, but the pattern is too perfect. Jiwoo stood up. Commander Lee, report. Daehyun's voice came through the speakers. Captain, we found something. Small device attached to the hull near the main sensor array. It's not ours. Petty Officer Nam is looking at it now. Don't remove it yet. I need to know what it does first. Minutes passed like hours. Then Nam Taeyang's voice came through, rough and worried. Captain, this is a cloaking beacon. It's already active. Sir, if this thing is working the way I think it is, nobody can see us right now. Jiwoo's blood went cold. What do you mean nobody can see us? I mean every sensor in this sector is reading empty space where our ship should be. We're invisible, Yoonji's voice cut in. Captain, the beacon is interfering with our systems. It's designed for alien technology. Our quantum computers are processing differently. It's causing feedback. Can you shut it down? If I shut it down, whoever planted it will know immediately. Jiwoo looked at the view screen. The station looked peaceful. Ships came and went. Nobody seemed to notice anything wrong. That was the problem. Nobody noticed anything wrong, Captain, Nari said softly. I'm picking up multiple ships on approach. Vrelnath configuration. They're surrounding our last known position. Jiwoo pulled up the tactical display. 6 Vrelnath warships were moving into formation around the station. They were broadcasting something. He switched to the external communication channels. A Vrelnath commander's voice filled the bridge. Distress signal received from human vessel Taiguki's Pride. Ship appears to have been caught in unexpected spatial anomaly. We are investigating the debris field. No survivors detected. They're lying, Daehyun said. We're not destroyed. We're right here. But nobody else knows that, Minho said quietly. As far as the galaxy is concerned, we just died. Jiwoo stared at the screen. The Vrelnath ships continued their fake search pattern. They were creating a story. A human ship lost in deep space. An accident. No one to blame. And Earth would never know the truth. They're going to kill us for real, Nari whispered. Jiwoo sat down in his command chair. His mind raced through options. They couldn't fight 6 warships. They couldn't run without being detected. They couldn't call for help. Nobody knew they were still alive. And the moment they revealed themselves, the Vrelnath would finish what they started. Lieutenant Park, Jiwoo said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. Cancel those diagnostics. I need you to do something else. What's that, sir? I need you to make us disappear for real. Cut all power except life support. No emissions, no signals, nothing. We're going dark. For how long? Jiwoo watched the Vrelnath ships moving through space. For as long as it takes to figure out why they want us dead. And how we're going to make them pay for it. The lights on the bridge dimmed. The Taiguki's Pride went silent, drifting in the void like a ghost. Around them, the Vrelnath fleet tightened their search pattern. And somewhere beyond the stars, Earth waited for a ship that would never come home. Unless Jiwoo could find a way to change that.